Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. So, what are we talking about today, Claire?
Today, I've got a more recent case for you. Mr. Deangelo Kenneth Martin, who was dubbed the Detroit East Side Killer, which was during 2018-2019.
Oh gosh,
That's what I said.
that is current.
Pretty recent. Now, the particular part of Detroit that we're going to talk about and during the time period we'll be discussing had at least 30,000 empty houses and like 20 square miles of vacant land. Basically, a perfect breeding ground for criminal activities, the sexual assaults, the drug deals / usages, homeless people, and murders, just prevalent in the area. Now, the mayor would say that removing the blighted houses was a priority. Now, the reason there were so many vacant houses is you remember the whole 2014, the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history. You remember any of that?
Right.
That is the cause of all the vacant houses. So the mayor would say that they're in an effort to try to remove that because they realize it's a problem area. But this feller would shed light on that, not good light, mind you, but for that to be eradicated. So a little bit about Deangelo. He was born in May 1985 in Detroit, Michigan. He was primarily raised by his mother, and he lived in a rough area during his childhood. Now, this naturally would lead him into crime early on. Now, by the time Deangelo was 14, his mother is arrested for kidnapping and murder.
What?
The year would be 1998. Now, this results in him moving in to be raised by his dad. Now, a little bit to shed light on that one, because when I was just like, I stumbled on Deangelo first, but then I was like, hold up. He was raised in a rough part of Detroit, and his mother goes to jail for murder. So you get a twofer today.
Are we going to talk about her? Because
sure fucking
I'm
are.
super confused. Who the hell did she kidnap and kill?
I'm gonna tell you. So on his mom's charge, we'll bring you to September 16th, 1998. 28-year-old Antony Carruthers was kidnapped by armed masked men outside of his music store as he was closing up. He would then be brought to Chantrine Baker's house, who is Deangelo's mom. Now, she was home when the men would take him into the basement where they would proceed to torture him. Using Antony's cell phone, several phone calls would be made for ransom to various people in his phone, right? One was to his brother, demanding $100,000. His girlfriend would also get a ransom call at 1 a.m. the night he snatched up, demanding $100,000 for his return before they up it to $200,000. Now, it's believed that the kidnappers assumed Antony had money. Now, during all these phone calls, he can be heard in the background screaming and crying and begging for whoever's on the phone to save him. Now, naturally, the family immediately called police. Now, during one of these phone calls, Antony was being beaten, and he would plead with his cousin, saying, "'Cause they fixin' to kill me." Now, they do manage to scrounge up about $10,000 and were prepared to meet the kidnappers at a restaurant for a swap the next morning. Unfortunately, before they could meet up and swap for Antony's freedom, his body would be discovered, his shorts pulled down, another pair pulled over his head. He had been shot in both knees, the groin, and twice in the head. His hands were cuffed behind his back. He had been beaten and burned with hot quarters and cigarettes. There's no doubt that his last few hours he endured so much brutality, it was horrifying to read. Now, mind you, this is at the home where this 14-year-old boy is. So if his mom, he's there while this is going on. He might not have seen it, but what the fuck?
Yeah, that's pretty disgusting on her. Was she dating anybody that was like the guy's attackers? Like, was she in a relationship, or was she part of a gang, or do we not know that?
I don't know. A total of 5 people would be arrested for his kidnapping and murder. Deangelo's mother would be one. Now, Deangelo's mom would admit that she had heard the screams, even smelled a burning odor. She even heard a couple gunshots. All she did was she went out to go get the men food because naturally torturing makes you hungry.
She should be ashamed of herself.
That, in my mind, I was like, how could you expect anyone who is that much, like, who's clearly that fucked up in the head to raise any sort of normal child?
At first, when you said that they were in like a rough area, I thought it was like a single mom. That's all she could afford. She's doing her best. Not she's part of the problem in the area.
Yeah, yeah. So a jailhouse informant would testify that Chantrine told her that she and 6 men kidnapped Antoni from the record store. The motivation was because he had snatched drugs that belonged to her, and when they got back to the house, Chantrine told them that they done fucked up because I told y'all to get his brother. She
Oh
apparently
gosh.
wanted Right. She apparently wanted to kidnap the brother because it was he who had money to pay a ransom. Now, mind you, Antoni, they don't say he was ever affiliated with any drugs. There weren't drugs in his record store, so part of me thinks she's just an idiot. But then I also found out that his stepdad was a. Oh shoot, I'm having a brain fart of what his name was. But he was a boxer, so it was like the family might have, like, they might not have had a ton of money,
But they weren't poor.
right? But it was his stepdad, so I think that's why they assumed they could ask for 200,000. But I think initially when they kidnapped him, they didn't realize it. So then I think once they did, that's why they upped the ransom to $200,000. But they didn't have that either.
It's sad. It's fucked up of these people because they're pieces of shit. But
But it would sound like she was the ringleader in all of this because since she told them who she wanted kidnapped and since they brought him back to the house, she can try to pretend to be all innocent. But the fact that she was the one who seemed to have coordinated it all
well,
was.
technically, if you want to use the screwed up logic, that's not who she told them to kidnap.
That was probably her defense. Nope. And she apparently, when she went downstairs to bring them their food, she told them, "You ain't killing him here. You need to take him out."
Oh
And
gosh.
she told them they weren't supposed to be killing him anyway, but they definitely weren't killing him in her basement. I think
I'm a little
probably because she's like,
disappointed in her.
right. I was like, what the fuck? So that means, like, when they shot him in the groin and the knees was when he was in the basement, and then they took him farther out. I think they realized that you can't do that. I mean, you shouldn't anyway, but how much do you expect somebody to live through?
That poor man.
So she would get life imprisonment for first degree
That's
murder.
it. Is it life or is it life with the possibility of parole?
She would get an additional 20 to 40 years for kidnapping and another 20 to 40 years for conspiracy.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to tell you this little tidbit. Did I forget to? She's 7 months pregnant when she's arrested.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
Sure fucking am. So, since that was in September when she's arrested, right? Well, that'll bring us to December 2nd when she goes into labor at the jail. Now, she was taken to the hospital, but they discharged her 2 hours later. I think maybe she wasn't far enough along, or maybe she was being unruly. I don't know. But she was
Okay.
discharged and sent back to her cell, which I thought was weird. Now, her labor
She might
pains.
not have been in labor. She might have just been
Right.
having like Braxton Hicks
Contraction.
contractions.
Well, her labor pains would intensify, and inmates would start banging, screaming, making noise on the toilets, which part of me laughed. But uh,
I
they
don't
were
think
just
they
trying.
meant farting, Claire.
They're like, "I'll do the best I can."
So disgusting.
Anyway,
So,
they're doing all that they can to get the guards to come check on her. They claim no one came for 2 hours. Now, when they do eventually come over, they would realize that they needed to call paramedics. So, paramedics arrive to find the baby's head emerging. It's now just after 2 a.m. Now, the baby wasn't breathing, and paramedics didn't have the equipment to resuscitate her. So, they scurry on to the hospital, where naturally, because she wasn't breathing when she was born, she suffers brain damage. She does survive, but would end up requiring around the clock care. And by the time she's 10 years old, she can only walk with the assistance of a walker.
Poor
So when I
baby.
say the poor little girl needs 24-hour care, she needs 24-hour care.
Who has custody of her? Because obviously mom's in
I
jail.
I don't know who has custody of her. I know she's got a guardian,
Does she
but
have a baby daddy that's not in jail?
no.
Like, I hope that this little girl, I guess is what I'm trying to say, at least has somebody that's looking out for her best interest. Because
Well,
obviously her mother did not do that for Deangelo. And I don't feel like she would have with her daughter either. So I just hope that for her sake, she's being cared for.
so her guardian would bring a lawsuit to the federal government against the jail officers for violating the little girl's rights by not getting her mother medical attention in a timely manner. Now, attorneys defending the jail officers would argue that those rights didn't apply to an unborn child because at that point she was a fetus and she doesn't have constitutional rights, to which I was a little horrified by that mentality, anyhow, because we're talking about she was in the throes of being born and you're going to say that right doesn't apply to her. You're a disgusting person.
Yeah. However, take that to the side. I wonder what she was like as I'm assuming you don't have
In
the
labor,
information.
I don't.
No, but what was she like as an inmate, period? Was she combative? Did she use her pregnancy as a reason to be like, "Oh, I'm having labor pains," and do a lot of false trips to the hospital? Like
I don't know.
it
I wouldn't be
it makes me wonder
surprised.
if there's a reason they ignored her. And since they had already gone to the hospital once that evening and they sent her home, if the guards just assumed she was up to her, what would I would assume possibly being typical shenanigans, and they just chose to ignore her.
I feel like it leans on that one because she doesn't seem to be a nice lady anyhow. So I feel like it's more likely that one. And she was always being a crybaby. So I think maybe she did have a history of that and they just figured this was another false alarm. And since we're talking 1 a.m., I don't know how many guards are there, but I would think that if they're making a lot of noise, that I mean, I don't
Y-
know at what point inmates being noisy, like I don't know, I haven't been to jail. The only thing I know is when I watched Locked Up, what was it, 90 days or 60 days in or something, where they put people in jail who weren't supposed to be there. And it doesn't seem like some people go to sleep, so if it's noisy all the time,
hmm, yeah,
I don't know. But I just thought it was disgusting mentality of saying that an unborn child doesn't have any rights, but then the attorneys were
yeah,
also arguing that brings up this case because she's an unborn child. If you want to say she has rights, then we dial back to whether abortions are legal or not. If they have rights, at what point do they have rights then? And I was like, fucking disgusting. So naturally, this lawsuit would go on for 4 years. She would eventually win. She's now 14 years old when she gets the results, and Wayne County ends up paying $8 million towards her lifetime care, which seems like a real big win. But I also feel like for medical expenses, that's a drop in the
it's really
bucket.
not.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
like
you
she,
figure if she's going to need round the clock care for the rest of her life, because I don't know how disabled she is, I would assume aside from physical handicaps, she probably also might have some mental handicaps since she was deprived of oxygen for so long.
mhm,
But then again, if her umbilical cord was attached, then maybe that kept her blood oxygenated. I don't know. Do you know what her mental
I don't
capabilities are?
just know they said she needs 24-hour care, and when she wins, she's 14 years old. So
Well, I still hope that her guardians are looking out for her and it's not just some scum that's draining her
throwing
bank
her,
account.
yeah, throwing her in a back bedroom and saying they're caring for her.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now that you know a little bit about all that shenanigans, it shouldn't be a
Yeah, thanks.
mystery that Deangelo does not end up being a model citizen, which I think is a little sad because you'd think that he would try to grow up to be
Better?
somebody to take care of his little sister. I mean, he's 14 when his sister is born. So by the time she is 14. He's 28. He could have tried to go right direction for his little sister. But
I don't
anyway,
feel like I don't feel like family was important. I don't think he was raised with that being a
yeah,
high priority.
didn't seem like he had much of a mother figure anyhow.
Well,
Now
was
back,
his dad involved? I know you said his dad gets custody of him, but
hold
was
up,
he
I'm telling
involved
you.
prior to her?
That one I don't know. Now, but back to Deangelo. He would graduate high school in 2003 and even go to Wayne University, but he would not graduate from the university. Then his dad would die, and he would move in with his grandparents on his dad's side.
Was his dad at least a decent person?
I don't know. I didn't go that far back in the family tree.
Okay. Well,
It
I
didn't
didn't feel like
seem.
that's that far back.
His mom shocked me enough that I was like, fuck. I wanted to, like, we're supposed to be focusing on Deangelo, and I didn't, like, how far back do you need to go? It's a bad place, and apparently drugs are highly prevalent in Detroit, and just about everybody's been in and out of jail. It's not a place to visit. Add that to my list of Boston and Detroit. They're on the cut list.
Boston. I thought it was Baltimore.
That too. But I don't know. There's nothing wrong with Boston. I did get confused. I realized they're not near each other. Baltimore.
They just start with the B.
It did. Shut up. It's on the right coast. Anyway, he struggles to find a job, and naturally, his joblessness leads to financial difficulties, which inevitably have him turn homeless. Now, by January 2006, he'll have charges for fleeing the police in his vehicle. He ended up getting sentenced to 3 years. Now, he didn't take that as a wake-up call and would be arrested in July 2009 for receiving stolen property and would get sentenced to 2 years. Now, he wouldn't be in jail for even a year, and by the time he's 34 years old, he's 5'10" and 195 pounds.
Of jiggle or muscle?
He doesn't look fat.
All right.
So I would say as healthy as you can be while homeless. Which will bring us to February 26, 2018. Approximately 4:25 p.m., a 43-year-old homeless man went into a vacant house in the Winthrop area where he discovered the body of a woman lying face down on the floor with blood all over her face. He carried the victim outside and flagged down police. Now, that man was initially charged for her murder, but evidence later clears him. Which I was like, that really sucks because he's trying to
Yeah.
be like, hey, and they're like, arrest him, he did it. That's not what the
No. But at least he got a hot meal.
yeah. Now the police, when they go in, they find a used condom inside the house. Now
Yeah.
the victim's lifeless body was taken to Wayne County Morgue, and she was later identified as Annette Nelson. She was 57. Her death was determined by the medical examiner to be a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. Now, a little bit more than a year later, Detroit police officers respond to reports of another dead person inside a vacant house. The body was discovered by another man who went inside the house to smoke marijuana. The officers would then discover a deceased female, face down, bruised and bloodied, and a used condom found near her body. Now, the victim's lifeless body was identified as Nancy Harrison, 52. Her death was also caused by blunt force trauma.
I don't mean to sound awful here, but are they drug addicts? Are they prostitutes? Are they homeless women? Or are these like.
So I don't want to say anyone was a prostitute because they're dead. However, when we get on to it and family are talking about it, it seems to be the correlation is all of these ladies have some sort of drug related issue. So I think since that's why I wanted to tell you the area we're talking about happens to be a criminal hotbed of it's just basically a bunch of houses people are going in and out of, and they can do drugs, they can do whatever, but it's not a good area to be in. So I don't know if they're in the area because they're trying to get some drugs and then stumble into this feller, but family would say with them that like they'll admit that their either sister or daughter had a drug issue, but that didn't make her a bad person. It just
Right. It just means they're struggling with an issue, with a substance abuse issue, and they met the wrong person at the wrong time, and
yeah.
their life is no less valuable. I was just curious if it's like a a snatch and grab, they're coming out of work, or if they were out doing
So
something that probably was considered dangerous to start with, and then they stopped. Like, I was just
I
trying to get
feel
my mind around where he's snatching these ladies from.
I feel like it's a little bit of that. Like they're in the wrong area because they're looking for drugs and get snatched. I mean, again, drugs are bad. You get around bad people, you get in bad areas. Just don't start it.
Yeah.
Now, a few days later, 7:20 p.m., police officers respond to another report of a dead person and a third vacant house. The officers discovered a deceased female laying face down, a used condom found near her body. Medics are called to the scene. They pronounce her deceased. She's identified as Travisine Ellis. She's 55. Now,
Okay.
her cause of death and manner of death were unable to be determined because it took so long to find her that she was so badly decomposed.
So I know I'm going to sound like an asshole. How old is Deangelo at this point?
He's in his 30s.
These women are all
Older?
quite a bit older than him.
I'm about to shed some light on that.
Okay. Because I'm seeing that a pattern of three women in their 50s. Okay. Shed some light. I need a light.
Now, on May 7th, a 26-year-old girl, unnamed, would be attacked and stabbed by Deangelo. Now, naturally, she doesn't know Deangelo. I'm telling you it's Deangelo because we know it is him now. But she would fight back very hard and manage to get free and run for her life. Now, initially, she does not go to police. It's not until they start combing that area, asking people, and trying to put all this together, because it doesn't take long before police start to realize, the bodies, I mean, the connection, all the things. So they're going to want to know about other attacks on women, and that's how later we'll learn that he attacked this 26-year-old girl. I think when he went after a youngin, he didn't realize how squirrely they were, so that's why he was trying to go for people who were
A little bit older.
easier,
Yeah.
right, easier to overpower. But she does survive. Now, after the first three bodies are found, 40 police officers would start going out to check all the nearby houses, all the vacant ones, because naturally they're thinking, how many other bodies, especially since the one that was found more recently was so badly decomposed it made anything real difficult, that there could be others that are just waiting to be found. And it's also possible people know that they're there, they just poke their head in and don't want to be a part of an investigation, because look what happened to that first feller.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it also didn't take long for them to get a group of volunteers together to go through the streets at night to ask locals, including prostitutes, if they knew anything, or, if they, because people talk. I mean, the gals, where they are other competition, that they're going to talk of if they know if somebody had gotten assaulted or a feller's bad or who's out and about.
Right. Because realistically, even if they are, as you put it, each other's competition, turns out the one thing they have in common is if somebody's out there plucking them off, they need that person to go.
Yeah. Or if they saw anybody lingering in that area, or saw so and so with somebody else, like that's how they're canvassing that their neighborhood. And it'll bring us to June 3rd. It's the middle of the night when 51-year-old Angela Gardner she heard something behind her, but doesn't have the time to turn around before she's knocked unconscious and dragged into an abandoned house on Mack Avenue. Now, it happens to be a house where another victim was found, but she doesn't obviously know that. She's just knocked upside the head and dragged into a house.
Tell me the
When
police are scoping it out.
they sure weren't. But
Damn.
she wakes up to her actively being assaulted and is begging the man to let her go and begging for her life as he's raping her. Then he begins to choke her when she remembers. I feel like when she was being raped after being knocked unconscious, it takes her a little bit of, coming to realize she's got her trusty blade in her pocket. She grabs that sucker, swings it with all her might, and as she says, she popped him with it. Which I was like, get him!
Go her. What was she wearing that he was raping her, but she still was able to access a pocket?
Maybe her pants were next to her. I don't know.
I was just curious.
Oh, I don't. Andrea, I don't know. This is her story.
I was just curious. I was asking a question.
And it didn't say it was in her pants pocket, so maybe it was like her hoodie. I don't know what her jail pocket. I don't know.
Ew.
She
My only.
remembers she has a blade. Andrea is the point of this. She grabs it. She thumps his ass.
She thumps him or stabs him?
She says she popped him with it because I tried real hard to figure out, did she stab him? And it doesn't say where she hit him either. She just says she pops him with it. Anyway,
So I
she
feel like if I
manages.
pop a balloon with a needle, it's like pop.
I pictured like with somebody, if you whack somebody with a shoe, you popped them with it. And now when he's arrested, he has a bandage over his eyeball. So I feel like she thwacked him in the face.
I think she
And it,
stabbed him in the eyeball.
well, I think when she popped him, I think she wrapped her hand around it rather than try to figure out, because obviously it's dark, she can't see anything. So I think she held it in her hand and sideways thunked him. Because it did not say she stabbed him, and he's not treated for a stabbed injury. And that's what I pictured. Like, you never like you're holding it like it's like you're got a tight grip on it, and she just, because that would hurt. You hit somebody in the
Yeah.
cheekbone, that's gonna rattle some shit. Anyway, she manages to take him by surprise enough to get him off her and proceeded to jump out of the vacant home's window. I will assume they're on the first floor. Now, then she goes
I
running
would
for her
hope for
life to.
her.
She went running for her life to the closest gas station. Now, obviously, she does survive her attack and is considered Angelo's fifth victim. Now, the blood on her clothing would be used to connect Deangelo to her attack and also to all the other victims all those condoms that he left everywhere. Now, based on her description of the man and that the house was one that was already a location for another victim, it wasn't hard to piece it all together. Unfortunately, though, we're going on to June 5th, 2019, 5 a.m. At another vacant house. 2 Detroit police officers were flagged down by a 59-year-old man who discovered the decomposing body of Miss Jones inside the house. The officers observed her face down with a used condom found near her body. Now, her body was taken to the morgue, but the cause of death was undetermined due to its advanced decomposition. Now, 2 days later, Deangelo is announced as a person of interest. His name kept coming up as being in the area of several victims, so they wanted to talk to him. Now, 3 days later, really 5 days after the last victim's found, but 3 days after he's announced as a person of interest, Deangelo is arrested while sitting at a bus stop. And I can't help but think that just like your bus stop killer feller, that maybe that's where he was finding his victims. He's just sitting on a bench waiting for somebody to walk by. And he either decides that's the one he's going to get, because you figure he's homeless, he's not going to work, he's just sitting there, he's got all the time in the world to just select who he's going to rape and murder next.
He's disgusting.
Yep. Now, he was initially charged for the attack on Angela, one of the surviving victims, but that allowed the police to get together the case against him on the other murders. And by September, he's officially charged with all 4 murders in addition to the sexual assault charges on like the 26-year-old and then Angela. Mm-hmm. Now, by October, Deangelo was examined to see if he's competent to stand trial, which would start August 2020. Now, he is thought to have been involved in another murder, Deborah Reynolds, whose body was identified in October 2019. Now, her body was found in December 2018 in a home off of Woodard Avenue. Now, she had been reported missing in August. Now, her previous encounter was with Deangelo on August 3rd, where gas station footage showed the two together drunk. The gas station was on Woodard Avenue, which was a stone's throw away from one of the vacant houses where another victim was found. Now, since it took so long to find her body, her remains were identified using her hairbrush brought in by the family for comparison, which may be so sad for cases like that because it takes so long to find out if that's your loved one or not. Yeah, and they deserve so much. It's so sad. It makes it, I mean, it's bad enough if they're murdered by a piece of shit, but to not know for a while and they were left there.
That's awful. That poor family.
Now, she was found wrapped in a sheet and her body had been shoved under a couch in an abandoned home, is how she was found. Now, it was believed that Deangelo would lure women into abandoned houses where then he would rape and kill them. He left his victims face down with a used condom nearby, which would be used to match Deangelo. Now, another thing was he would position all the bodies, which is why they were able to connect them as easily. It would say they were face down with a leg up and a sock on the body. I tried real hard to figure out what that meant because they would also say he left a sock as a calling card. So I don't know if that means he left a sock, like threw it on, or he left a
Or on their
sock
foot.
on a foot. Because I could also see it be if he yanks off that condom and flings it, he wipes himself with a sock and then throws it on their body.
Ugh.
Yeah,
He's
he's
disgusting.
disgusting. He is disgusting. But they would say that all the bodies were positioned with a leg up and a sock on. Now, Deangelo's ex girlfriend would come forward and testify that he would sexually assault her if she refused sex with him. Now, mind you, she met him while she was working as a prostitute and she was hooked on crack, so that's why she never went to the police. But I was like, so was he actually her boyfriend or he was just a feller who came and got free sex?
Well,
He
she's
stole
lucky
it.
he didn't kill her. I'm going to say that it was a girlfriend because, based off of everything else that we know about this guy, she probably could have been tied to him because they were dating and had been seen together, which is why she never ended up dead.
Yeah. Angela, the surviving victim, would talk with news people that she doesn't want her face shown, and I can't say I blame her. But she said she hated to look at D'Angelo's face. It made her sick to her stomach. And to be honest with you, I wish I would have killed him because he don't deserve to be here. And I agree with her.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. He's a piece of shit.
They also interviewed D'Angelo's aunt. D'Angelo's aunt would say she didn't understand anything, but her prayers were with the families of the victims. And she begs that they forgive him, but no one had no right to take their lives. She believes the murders were motivated by drugs.
Uh, okay.
I'm not a fan of the aunt because
It sounds like she's kind of blaming the victim.
I have mixed feelings. I feel like it would have been better for her to just say her prayers are with the families of the victims. But for
Yeah,
her to
but throwing
beg,
out the it's fueled by drugs? No, she's placing the blame on the victims.
now the news
Like,
people had asked her what she thought was the reason for all the murderings, and she would say drugs. But
no. My nephew's a piece of shit, is what the response should have been.
so is his mom.
There is no other way to respond to that. Why do you think this happened? I think it happened because he's a piece of garbage. And I am so sorry for the losses that these families are having to go through. There is no excuse. Is a proper response, not, I think it was over drugs.
Now, D'Angelo would call his mom while he was in jail. Now, mind you, she's still in jail or prison, whatever. And he would
They're
cry like
bonding
now he would cry like a little bitch that he is.
because his honey hurt.
Naturally, she's shocked about her boy doing this. And I did the whole, really? You're shocked that you raised a piece of shit?
Okay.
I feel like the cards were stacked against him from the start because he was born to her.
Maybe she was more shocked because he had remorse. Because it don't sound like she's got none of that.
I did laugh that he called his mom crying.
Mom, they caught me. Crybaby
But
bitch.
I'm going to tell you this part I find upsetting, so I'm prepared for you to also be upset.
All right, what do you got?
D'Angelo would plead guilty to second-degree murder of 4 women and raping and assaulting 10 others. Now, during his sentencing, 5 people would testify. One was Nancy Harrison's dad. Now, he would testify that he knew she had a drug problem, but she was loved. She was always there for her kids. She never got the opportunity to meet her grandkids. And he also followed it up with, now mind you, whenever you speak like a victim impact statement, you can't talk to the person, you have to address the court. So plenty of times while these people are talking, the judge has to be like, you can't talk directly to him, you've got to talk to me, address the court. But before he goes, like he'd already been told you can't talk directly to him, but then he goes, I'm just going to say this last thing, Your Honor. I hope Bubba gets you. When he turns to, and I thought that shit was hilarious. Now, mind you,
That's
they don't say
awesome.
anything after that, but that was his last little remark. But
He got the last word in.
yeah. Now, Tim Harrison would also testify at that victim impact hearing, nearly in tears. He could barely get through a whole lot. So, where her dad talked a lot about how much their lives have been affected by having a member of their family ripped from them. But because at this point it's been 3 years, and he would talk about how his sister had such a big heart, and it's only because of the respect he has for the court and the judges that he's not on that man right there. And then he's like, but I gotta go because I don't know how much I can hold back. His willpower isn't getting the best of him, and he's got to take a step out or he's going to be in jail. Another family member of a victim, Nancy's daughter Lisa, would testify how much she missed her mom and that Deangelo deserved the death penalty, which, mind you, since he took a plea deal, that's off the table.
I don't think they should be allowed to do that.
Fuck, I didn't either. I was like, this piece of shit. No, she would say that her was an involved mother, sister, and now she's a grandma, but she'll never get to meet her grandkids. Now, she said that she will have to endure a lifetime of pain without her mother. That when she heard her mother had died, she went to police to find out what happened because she knew that, I mean, it's not like her mom was sick. She just knew her up and being dead and found her body somewhere, something had happened. Now, apparently, Detroit police do not begin an investigation until an autopsy is complete, but it took days for that report to be pronounced. Now, mind you, when she heard her mom had died and she had to wait for that report to come back, she couldn't think of anything else, so she took off work and went by that office every single day until the report was released. She buried her mom before she even knew what had happened. So when she saw what she looked like and not knowing what had happened, I never, not to sound like an idiot, but it never occurred to me that when we hear stories, we hear all the information together. I hadn't thought of it from the side of if you get the body and you're burying it, there can be they're not telling you anything of what happened because it's an open investigation. So she saw her mom when she buried her and could tell like she's battered up. She knew something not good happened, but she just didn't know. She buried her without any sort of closure or answers to any questions. And I can't imagine how hard that would be.
I'm surprised they weren't able to give her some kind of information, though, because you would think that the police would need to ask her if she knew of anybody. Obviously, she knows her mom was murdered.
Right.
So,
But
because
she
by
just,
seeing her body, she knows it's not like it was a drug overdose or a car accident or anything like that. She knows that it was because of someone else.
so I think also with them thinking they've got a serial killer, they're being tight lipped. So they're
Mm.
not going to say all the things. And who wants to tell somebody all that?
Yeah,
But
it's a tough spot to be in for the police and the family.
and I can only imagine seeing, however, like you can only imagine, you can only pretty up somebody who's been beaten to death so much for them to be like, "Oh my God, what happened to you?" Now, Travisine Ellis's daughter would also testify that she doesn't even know how to explain to her children what had happened to their grandmother, so they don't fear her life. And then she kindly excused herself because she was just so upset she couldn't talk, which made me feel for her too because it's just, I mean, she talked about being afraid to leave the house. That like, how do you go on when there are people out there who do bad things? And how did she raise her kids to not be afraid of all that?
Yeah.
Annette Nelson's twin sister would testify that her sister had a mental illness, also paired with an addiction to crack. Her family would try to help her by providing her a house to ensure that she wasn't homeless, and were trying to get her on a path. And obviously, they're going to miss her, that she was the light of the family, but that obviously that's ripped from them. Now it came to Deangelo, who had addressed the court in a half-hearted apology, saying, "I just want to apologize for what people are going through."
Yeah, right. His mom probably advised him to at least show some kind of remorse since he done got caught.
Now, he will spend a minimum of 45 years in prison.
Really?
He got 6 to 20 years
What?
for kidnapping, assault with intent to commit murder, and several charges of sexual misconduct. His earliest release date is June 5th, 2064, and his very latest possible release date would be in 2089, giving him an opportunity to be free in his 80s. Which pisses me off because I don't think he should have even a remote possibility of fresh air. And I hope that he lives in jail until his 70s and then is fucked to death.
Yeah.
But those are those pieces of shit. And again, Detroit is scratched off the list of, I don't want to step a toenail there. It's not a good place. And the mayor needs to get their shit together. And if they know that's an area that's a problem, make it a nice big park.
So I was looking at the picture you sent. It looks like his one eye that she walloped him in or popped him in, it looks like a glass eyeball.
Maybe it is. But that's why I tried so hard when I saw that his arrest picture or his mugshot was bandaged, because I was like, oh shit. Which is why I think she balled up her fist with that knife in there and clocked him with it. And I can see doing that because you're struggling. I mean, you probably can't. I mean, it would be easier to do that than it would be to figure out which
open the blade.
Yeah. And at least like that, she very well, if she opened it and lost the knife, she could have ended up stabbed to death. So she did good.
Well, even if the knife was closed and sticking out of like the side of her hand or the top of her hand, whichever way she walloped him, she could have jabbed him with it. Even though it's not the pointy part, she could have the metal, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I picture her closing her fist around it, a little part poking out, and that's what clops him in the head.
Yeah. What a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
When's his mom get out?
She got life in jail.
Oh, that's right. No parole.
Right. But they get to talk.
Well, I hope out of all of this, I hope that his little sister is at least cared for by somebody. And that the families are healing, obviously, from all his atrocious acts. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.